Hello everybody, Adam Cleary from FourFourTwo here, metaphysically returning from the feast of football we've all enjoyed this weekend to talk to you about Aston Villa, one of the most interesting and exciting teams in England, maybe about to be one of the most interesting and exciting teams in the Champions League. Deadly serious. Well, straight off the bat, are Aston Villa a top 4 team? Well, they just went and beat a team who are already in the top 4 to put themselves in the top 4, so yes, currently they are a top 4 team. And they're there completely on merit, like for total number of goals scored, they're a top 4 team. For total number of shots, they're a top 4 team. For total shots on target, they're a top 4 team. Hey, maybe you're one of those people who really likes XG. Well, they're a top 4 team for that. Maybe you love non-penalty XG, which is their XG minus all the penalties, because obviously penalties grossly inflate your XG. They're a top 4 team for that. Now, admittedly, when you flip those stats around, it becomes less good, like goals conceded, shots on target against, total XG against, all of that stuff. They're not a top 4 team. They're like right smack bang in the middle of mid-table. But crucially, they're all defensive stats, aren't they? And as you know, defending is for nerds. Look, let's just be real here, right? If you're in the top 4 of the Premier League for creating chances and scoring goals, you're just really good. Like, that just doesn't happen by accident. And how's he done it? How's genius, big brain, tricksy continental manager Unai Emery, what system has he devised that has flummoxed English football? It's a 4-4-2. He's actually using a 4-4-2 and nobody knows how to play against it. That's really funny. And I mean, of course, if nothing else, simply very cool of him to devise his entire footballing philosophy around both his favourite magazine and YouTube channel. Please do consider subscribing. Alright, so all joking aside, even though obviously I wasn't joking, it is a 4-4-2 in principle, but the way he executes it is just not a 4-4-2 at all, because this is the end result they are trying to end up in the final third. They want a line of 5 players stretching the width of the pitch, all able to either push forward or drop back and get between the lines. That's what they're trying to achieve, but they do that from this. They start with a really basic 4-4-2. And how Aston Villa get from this to this is all to do with these 2 wide players here. Because you think of 4-4-2, you think of wingers, don't you? You think of classic, get to the byline, get your cross in, that kind of player. They couldn't be more different. It's effectively closer to like a box midfield because you have the 2 holding players, they drop off, and then these 2 come in about as narrow as they're able to do. And the reason for that is because with this back 6 here, all playing the ball around in the build-up, they are trying to get a pass through the middle of the pitch to allow one of these 2 players to receive it. And the reason for that is really clever because it's trying to do one thing, and if you directly try and stop that one thing, it enables you to do something else, which is really good. But first and foremost, it's quite unlikely that a fullback is going to want to track a wide player into this space to stop them receiving a pass. As far as the fullback's concerned, that stops being their problem. So with Aston Villa playing the ball around at the back, just being very patient with it, they'll even do that thing that Brighton will do, where they'll just put their foot on the ball and be like, well, I've got my foot on the ball. Guess I'm not prepared to dribble around you or pass it anywhere, so you should come and try and win it back. They try and bait the opposition forward in that way to create space here. One of the wide players will eventually come into the middle, and then they make the line-breaking pass, which takes the entire opposition press out the way, either over the top or through the middle, into here. And when one of the wide players receives the ball in that central area, that is just the trigger for the entire rest of the Aston Villa squad to assemble their attacking shape. It's like, I know it sounds like there's a little bit of like Morphin Time Power Rangers about it, and there is. That is exactly what it's like. So if, for example, it is the left-hand wide player, the first thing that has to happen is that the fullback on that side has to get up and provide the width over there. The wide player on the other side, they move out to the touchline to help stretch the opposition. The forward nearest to them, they go into sort of an advanced 8 position. Always, if possible, Ollie Watkins will stay in the middle, and then they carry the ball into this area, giving you that front 5. Behind them, the 2 defensive midfielders, they will push up, and the defenders swing around into a nice back 3 with the opposite side fullback tucking in because they're really happy to do that. So that is how Villa go from a 4-4-2 in their own half to a 3-2-5 all up in your chips. But what's really impressive is not just that they do this, it's how quickly they can do this, how quickly they can get from back to front, from system to system, from shape to shape. Like, technical term for you here, this is sort of what's known as a direct attack, which sounds obvious, like all attacks are direct, but it's like a statistic thing which basically refers to any time you start with the ball in your own half and you end up with either a touch in the box or a shot, so you basically create a chance out of it. And I think it's 50% of all the passes have to be forward. So you're looking to basically go from back to front as quickly as you can. It's a direct attack. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, well, surely every team wants to do direct attacks. Well, they do if they can, but you want to see the current league table for just direct attacks. The top, Villa are literally top. They are the best team in the Premier League right now from starting with the ball at the back and creating a chance out of it. Like, just to show you how much of a stylistic thing it is, Man City, famed for knocking the ball around all over the pitch, death by 1,000 cuts, they languish down in like 15th or something, and Liverpool, obviously famed for how quickly they attack you and go from end to end, they're second. Like, Liverpool are the team you think of when you think of direct attacks, and Aston Villa, currently, are better at it than they are. Now, we could just go over the Tottenham goal again and show you why having a front five like this is so dangerous, and how you've got players who can drop off, you've got width, you can cross, you can come inside. It gives you so many options, and obviously what you're trying to do, like you do anywhere on the pitch, is get a numerical advantage. Like, the whole thing about box midfields is you get 4 players where the opposition have 3, so the whole point of having this attacking 5 is you have 5 players, seen here, where the opposition only has 4 players, seen here. And ergo, it's impossible for everybody to be marked, so you're always going to have a spare man, and in this case, that was Tielemans. He was able to play Watkins in, and he scored a really, really good goal, so you can see why they want to do that. But what's even cleverer about this system is the way I have just shown you they make it, with Digne on this side, and I think he coming in doing that. That's not what they do all the time. They do this in another way. So let's just have a gentle reset here. Matty Cash, he goes back out to right back. The centre backs, they go there. Digne comes all the way back, and I think I had McGinn here. He received the ball, so he goes back out there. Diaby and Watkins, and we're back in our 4-4-2. So what happens if in that line-breaking pass it actually goes to this guy? Well, they just do the exact same thing again from the other side. The width, that comes from the right back. He gets up there. The 2 forwards, they'll usually try and keep Watkins in the centre, but he can drift out ever so slightly. He's flanked by the 2-8, and the other wide attacker, they come into that side. The defence shuffles over. Now Digne, who's just as comfortable being at left centre-back, he comes across there as well. They push the holding midfielders up, and voila! It's the same 5 from the other side. And do you know how hard that is? To put, like, Emery's been in this job just over a year, and he's managed to get a team together with just 2 transfer windows. They haven't spent an insane amount of money. The majority of what he's done here is in coaching. But you want to know my other favourite thing about Aston Villa? Like, they are so aggressive and so front foot, and when they get you in this system, they squeeze you as high as they possibly can. They push that line right the way up, and it's where they concede most of their goals from, because they leave all the space behind. It's the risk reward that they're really happy with. They play on the front foot like this, and they're not even a high pressing team. They don't try and win the ball back here like you'd expect them to. Like, here's a mind-bending statistic for you. Like, I compared them to Liverpool before because they kind of set the bar for direct attacks in the Premier League, and now Villa are even better at it than they are. So you'd assume that other side of Liverpool's game, which is when you've pushed everybody up, you try and win it back really quickly, you're good at high turnovers, winning the ball back in the opposition's third. Villa, by extension, must now be really good at that, right? Nah. Wrong. They're 3rd bottom in the league for the number of high turnovers. They're not interested in trying to win the ball back here. They want to do their play, and if it doesn't work, they will reset back into their 4-4-2 and wait until they get the ball back. Like, this breaks down, or they lose the ball, or they miss the shot, or whatever, they get back into their 4-4-2. We'll just do the old magic wand here. And they don't sit deep, and they don't sit compact, and they're not overly defensive. They still try and keep the line as high as they possibly can. But what they do is they take their 4-4-2 and they make it a diamond 4-4-2. One of the holding midfielders charge into sort of this number 10 position, and they'll cover across there, and they'll try and stop teams playing through the middle from doing the kind of build-up that they themselves would do. They want to stop that pass through the centre. So instead, they normally quite happily allow the ball to go out to the fullbacks, and then that triggers the 2 wide players to press directly in a straight line to stop any pass going forward. What they're trying to force the opposition to do is to kind of run out of ideas, hit the ball long, and because they've got big strapping centre-backs, that's why they bought Pau Torres, they just clean it up. They will squeeze and squeeze and push up and leave all this space in behind because they're trying to bait the opposition into hitting it long, either so they'll win the aerial challenge or it'll go in behind and Martinez can come and sweep it up. And then, once they've got the ball back, they just reset into their 4-4-2 and they start the whole thing again. It's just so good. My favourite thing about this, though, is that their next most common route to goal, their plan B, is something that literally can only happen because of the most common solution to plan A. Like, let's say you go and squeeze them right the way up and you tell your fullback, listen here, Sonny, if you see that wide midfielder moving into the middle to receive that ball, you go with him. You make sure he's not free to receive that pass. And okay, you say, so off you trot over there to make sure that happens, and then one of Villa's forwards just spins into the space that you have left. And then if it's Ollie Watkins, the defender, or Martinez, they're perfectly happy lumping a ball into your feet that you can hold up and then bring everybody else into play with. Or if you're Diaby, they're quite happy lumping it in behind for you to go and chase, because that's why they've got Diaby as one of the centre forwards, because he offers another sort of approach to Watkins. They've got so many ways they can hurt you. It's so fun to watch. And to quote cultural icon Brian Butterfield, that's still not all. Now, what are the advantages of having the kinds of centre-backs who are there to deal with the aerial threat, the long ball threat that you are forcing the opposition to have, is that you're far more dangerous from set pieces. And just to compare Villa to the teams they are competing for Champions League places for at set pieces, they are joint top. They've got 4 goals, the exact same amount as set-piece specialists Newcastle United. And I appreciate when you look at the actual numbers, it's not like loads more, it's just the odd goal here and there, but extrapolate that out across the course of a season. And Villa end up with 8, 9, 10, 12 goals from set pieces, and everybody else ends up with 4, 5, or 6. And there's such small margins trying to qualify for the Champions League, those goals could make all the difference. They're certainly worth having. The really mad thing about all of this is, though, Emery's been doing it for a year, and I think it still catches some people out. Some people are still surprised to see how good Villa are because of this perception of him as having been a flop or a failure while he was at Arsenal. And I mean, it wasn't good. I understand why there's a section of the Arsenal fan base that just have no love for him whatsoever, but it's very different because he has something of Villa that he never had at Arsenal. He had better or just more high reputation players, he had more money, bigger infrastructure, he had all that, but he doesn't have buy-in. And you gotta have that. If you want to have these lofty ideas and complex systems and all these different sort of approaches you want to have in game, you've got to have the players on side. You've got to have not just an 11, but a squad who all buy into what you're trying to do, who all sit there and they'll listen, and they'll pay attention, and they'll work, and they'll run, and they'll do all the stuff you're trying to tell them to do. And he's got that here. That's why it works. Now, don't get me wrong, by the way, it's not me saying it was all the players' fault at Arsenal. If they just listened to him, they would have won the flipping lot. It is a manager's job to get the players on side, so that was clearly part of that job he failed at. But looking at what he's doing at Villa now, it's also something that he clearly learned from as well. And yes, it is still early days and there's a long way to go. It's really hard to qualify for the Champions League, but you look at this Villa side and you see what they're doing on the ball, what they're doing off the ball, how much everybody buys in, how they don't feel like they're 1 or 2 injuries from being in the midst of a disaster or forgetting what it is they're trying to do. And they really could do it this year. They really could do it. So yes, that is Aston Villa, and I absolutely love Aston Villa this year. So next time they're on television, you should watch them and just look for all of this, and you will love Aston Villa as well. And hey, speaking of things you loved, if you loved this video, then that's just what we do here at FourFourTwo. It's what the whole channel's about, and not just the quote-unquote big clubs. We try and do everybody when something is interesting, and this is interesting. So please do consider subscribing to us here on YouTube. It's the one metric that really helps us out. And if, hey, magazines are more your thing, the world's greatest football magazine, we do that too. Available in all good retailers. If it was just me you like, though, you can get me on Twitter at Adam Cleary, CLERY, and Instagram and Threads, and probably the other one, LinkedIn. Yes, that's it. The 442 socials, they're in the corner of the video all the time. You can get them whenever the hell you like. And until next time, I've been Adam Cleary, that's been Aston Villa, and I will see you soon. Mondays, eh?